When I first met him, I thought I had found someone steady. We were in the same graduate program, constantly exhausted and living off coffee and deadlines. He wasn't flashy or overly charming, but he felt reliable in a way that made me relax around him. After 6 months of dating, we moved in together. It didn't feel rushed because we were already spending most nights at each other's places. Combining apartments felt practical, almost inevitable. Living together was surprisingly easy. We split chores evenly without having to argue about it. I handled breakfast and lunches, and he took care of dinner on the days I worked from the office. He worked from home, so he often did small things during the day. I would come home to the living room vacuumed or laundry folded. It felt like we were building something stable. My parents adored him. He would show up to their house and immediately ask what needed fixing. He'd mow the lawn, tighten loose hinges, carry groceries inside without being asked. I remember thinking how lucky I was. He wasn't just good to me. He was good to my family. That mattered more to me than grand romantic gestures. Early in our relationship, we talked about everything serious. Marriage, children, finances, timelines. We agreed that we wouldn't rush into having kids. We both had student loans, and while we weren't drowning, we weren't free yet. We wanted to build savings first. Stability was important to both of us. For 2 years, the topic of children barely came up again. We were focused on work and paying off debt. Life felt steady and predictable. Then slowly, something shifted. It didn't start with a big argument or an obvious red flag. It started with small changes that I brushed off at first. He began initiating intimacy differently. Specifically, he started trying to skip protection. We had always used it, even though I was on birth control. The first time he suggested we didn't need it, I laughed and reminded him that we always used it. He shrugged and didn't push. I assumed it was just a spontaneous moment. The second time felt less accidental. I stopped him again and he seemed slightly irritated before dropping it. That irritation stuck with me longer than I expected. Around that time we had dinner at his parents' house. His mother made a comment about how beautiful our children would be. She mentioned how excited she was to become a grandmother someday. I smiled politely and brushed it off. She had never brought up children before, so I assumed it was just a sweet comment. Still, something about it lingered afterward. A few days later, I noticed my birth control pills were missing from the medicine cabinet. They were always kept in the same place. I searched everywhere. When I asked him about them, he said he didn't know where they went. He suggested maybe they fell behind something while cleaning. It seemed plausible. I bought a new pack and tried not to overthink it. Accidents happen. I didn't want to assume anything darker. A week later, that pack disappeared too. This time there was no reasonable explanation. I confronted him directly. At first, he denied knowing anything. Then he hesitated in a way that made my stomach drop. Finally, he admitted he had taken them. He said he wanted to start trying for a baby. The words didn't register at first. I genuinely thought I misheard him. We had not talked about trying for a baby. We hadn't even discussed engagement recently. I reminded him of our original agreement to wait. He said things were different now. We weren't living paycheck to paycheck anymore. In his mind, that meant we were ready. Then he added something that hurt even more. He had talked to his mom about it. They both thought it was the right time. I felt my chest tighten. This wasn't just an impulsive decision. It was something he had planned and discussed without me. I asked why he didn't talk to me about it. He said he didn't want to pressure me. That explanation made no sense. Instead of pressuring me with a conversation, he chose to remove my birth control. He thought that was less confrontational. The logic felt twisted. Then he admitted he had already told his parents and some friends that we were trying. He told them it was supposed to be a surprise. He claimed I wanted to surprise everyone with a pregnancy announcement. My stomach dropped. He had created an entire narrative. A story where I was excited and participating willingly. I asked him how long he'd been thinking about this. He said a few months. A few months of planning and hiding it from me. That realization made me feel sick. Every attempt to skip protection suddenly felt calculated. Every casual comment about the future felt staged. I told him I needed space. I packed a small bag and drove to my parents' house. I didn't tell them the full truth. I said I wasn't feeling well and needed a break. My mom hugged me without asking too many questions. My dad looked concerned but gave me space. That night I cried in my childhood bedroom. I kept replaying the conversation in my head. I couldn't reconcile this version of him with the man I thought I knew. He had always been kind, thoughtful, generous. How could someone who vacuumed without being asked also decide to tamper with my birth control? The betrayal wasn't just about children. It was about autonomy. He made a life-altering decision without me. Motherhood is not something you spring on someone. It's not a surprise party. It's a permanent responsibility. I kept thinking about what he said, that once it happened, I would accept it. He genuinely believed I would just adjust to being pregnant. That assumption hurt almost as much as the act itself. He assumed I would adapt to whatever he chose for me. The next morning, his mother called. I didn't answer. Then she sent a text asking if I was okay and saying that big changes can feel overwhelming. The phrasing made my skin crawl. Big changes. As if this was a mutual plan, I started connecting the dots. The comment at dinner, the missing pills, the protection arguments. It wasn't coincidence, it felt coordinated. And that realization made it worse. I haven't told my parents the full story yet. My dad would drive straight to our apartment and confront him. I need to process this first. The hardest part is grieving the relationship I thought I had. 3 years of shared routines and memories. I thought we were building a future together. Now I realize he was building a future for us, without my consent. He's been texting constantly, apologizing, saying he panicked. Saying he thought I changed my mind once I saw a positive test. That sentence keeps echoing in my head. Once I saw a positive test. He was willing to trap me into a permanent decision. And then hope I'd fall in line. I love him, or at least I love who I thought he was. But trust doesn't survive something like this easily. I keep asking myself if I missed red flags. If there were signs I ignored. Maybe they were there, subtle and disguised as enthusiasm about the future. Maybe I just didn't want to see them. Right now, all I feel is exhaustion. Betrayal layered over confusion. Love mixed with anger. I know deep down that I can't go back to normal. Even if I wanted to, the trust is fractured. You can't unknow that someone tried to override your choices. You can't forget that someone felt entitled to your body and your timeline. I haven't told my parents because once I say it out loud, it becomes real. It becomes something that can't be minimized. For now, I'm just sitting in my childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling. Trying to understand how the man I trusted most decided he knew better than me about my own life. And that's the part that hurts the most. The next morning, I finally told my parents the truth. I couldn't keep pretending, I just needed a break. The words felt heavy in my mouth, but once they were out, there was no taking them back. My mom went silent first. Not confused, just stunned. My dad's face changed in a way I've only seen once before, when someone rear-ended me in high school. He asked one question. He did what? His voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp. I realized then that this wasn't something that could be minimized or explained away. I told them everything, the missing pills, the admission, the conversations with his mom, the fake story he told friends about us trying for a baby. My mom started crying quietly. My dad stood up and paced the kitchen. He kept saying, "That's not normal. That's not okay." I felt strange watching them react. Part of me still wanted to defend him, even after everything. That's what love does, it confuses loyalty with forgiveness. But hearing my dad call it what it was helped. He said, "That's a violation. Not dramatic, not exaggerated, just factual." He offered to go to the apartment immediately. I asked him not to. I didn't want this to escalate into shouting and threats. I needed to handle it myself. I needed to prove to myself that I could. Meanwhile, my boyfriend kept texting. The tone had shifted from apology to panic. He said I was overreacting and that couples go through things. He said he never meant to hurt me. He just wanted to move our life forward. That phrasing stuck with me. Move our life forward. As if I was holding us back. He started saying that a baby would make us stronger. That plenty of couples don't plan perfectly. That sometimes life just happens. But life didn't just happen. He tried to engineer it. Then his mom texted me directly. She said she understood that I might be scared. She told me that motherhood changes a woman in beautiful ways. I didn't respond. The fact that she felt entitled to weigh in at all was infuriating. This was between me and her son. Later that day, I checked our shared online account for rent. I wanted to see if anything else looked unusual. I wasn't expecting to find anything specific, but I did notice something. He had ordered ovulation test strips a month ago. I felt cold all over. That meant he wasn't just removing my birth control randomly. He was tracking my cycle, timing intimacy, planning it around peak fertility. That level of premeditation made it impossible to see this as a moment of bad judgment. This was deliberate. I confronted him over the phone about the ovulation tests. There was a long pause before he answered. Then he admitted it. He said he was trying to help things along. As if pregnancy was a group project he could manage behind the scenes. I asked him if he understood how disturbing that sounded. He said I was twisting it to make him look like a monster. That word monster came from him, not me. I never called him that. But maybe part of him knew how it sounded. He kept repeating that he loved me, that he wanted a family with me. That everything he did was because he saw me as his future. But love doesn't override consent. Wanting a future doesn't justify manipulation. He then said something that made my decision clear. He said, "I knew if we talked about it, you'd say no." And I didn't want to hear no. That was it. He didn't want to hear no. So he removed my ability to say it. I hung up after that. That night, I started packing my things mentally. I made a list of what was mine in the apartment. Furniture I bought. Kitchen items. My desk. It felt surreal planning an exit from a life I thought was secure. The next morning, I asked him to meet me in a public place. I didn't feel comfortable going back alone. We met at a quiet cafe near my parents' house. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept. For a split second, I felt sorry for him. Then I remembered the ovulation tests. He started by apologizing again. He said he panicked when his mom brought up grandchildren and realized how much he wanted that future. He said he felt like we were drifting. That a baby would anchor us. I told him that a child is not a solution to relationship anxiety. It's a lifelong responsibility. He insisted that I would have come around eventually. That he believed I wanted kids deep down. I asked him why he didn't trust me to decide that for myself. He didn't have an answer. Instead, he asked if we could start over, go to counseling, Forget the whole thing. But you can't forget someone tried to manipulate your reproductive choices. That's not a small argument. That's foundational trust. I told him I was ending the relationship. He looked genuinely shocked, as if he hadn't considered that outcome. He said I was throwing away 3 years over a mistake. I said it wasn't a mistake, it was a decision. He tried one last angle. He said if I left, I'd regret losing someone who loved me this much. That line made me sad more than angry. If this was his version of love, I didn't want it. We sat there in silence for a long time. I expected him to get angry, but he didn't. Instead, he asked how we would divide everything. The practicality of that question made it feel final. Over the next few days, I moved my belongings out with my dad's help. He stayed calm, but I could tell he was restraining himself. My boyfriend didn't argue about who took what. He seemed defeated. His mom called me once more, saying she hoped I'd reconsider. I told her gently but firmly that this was not up for discussion. I blocked her number after that. The apartment felt different when I went back to collect the last of my things. Smaller. Colder. I kept thinking about the version of us that used to cook dinner together. That version felt distant now. As I closed the door for the last time, I felt a mix of grief and relief. Grief for the future I thought I had. Relief that I found out before it was too late. I keep imagining what would have happened if I hadn't noticed the pills missing. If I had trusted him blindly. That thought terrifies me. I'm still processing everything. I still wake up some nights feeling confused. But I also feel stronger. Because I chose myself. I chose autonomy over comfort. Safety over familiarity. 3 years feels like a long time to lose. But a lifetime with someone who doesn't respect my choices would have been longer. I don't know what comes next. But I know I won't settle for someone who thinks I didn't want to hear no is a valid excuse. And that clarity is worth the heartbreak.